The dough mixer tragedy. The factory floor was a symphony of industrial noise, a constant, rhythmic pounding from the massive dough mixer that was the heart of the bakery. It stood as a metal giant, its stainless steel bowl large enough to hold a bathtub's worth of dense, sticky batter. The whirring of its twin helical blades was a deafening drone that workers learned to tune out. It was during a cleanup shift when the routine turned into horror. The machine was supposed to be locked out, but its power source was only covered up by a safety tag, which meant, due to the procedure of lockout-tagout being bypassed, the giant dough mixer was only sleeping. A worker who was arm-deep in the mixer scraping out the last of the residue felt a sudden, irresistible tug on his sleeve. In a heartbeat, the machine's immense torque wrenched him forward. His body was pulled into the mixer, the powerful blades catching his limbs and systematically dragging him down. The noise was so loud that his initial screams were swallowed whole by the machine's roar. For his colleagues, nothing seemed amiss at first, just the normal, thunderous operation. It was only when they noticed a strange, jerking motion in the machine's rhythm and a splash of a color that wasn't dough that they ran for the emergency stop. Those were the longest minutes imaginable. Inside the mixer, a conscious, terrified human was being crushed and mangled against the unyielding metal, his world reduced to an unimaginable prison of mechanical force and agony, waiting for a rescue that could not come quickly enough to save him as he died on the scene. The industrial degreaser vat tragedy. In this plant, the parts cleaning station was the last place anyone wanted to be stationed. The air was thick with the sweet chemical smell of trichloroethylene, a solvent so strong it could strip paint. The vat itself was a large, open-topped metal box, heated from below to keep the toxic solution at a steady, warm temperature. A thin, greasy film always coated the floor around it. A new hire, still getting used to the slippery footing and the dizzying fumes, was leaning over the edge, using a long hook to retrieve a basket of parts, when his rubber-soled boot lost its purchase. With a cry that was cut short, he plunged headfirst into the vat. The shock was instantaneous and multi-layered. The heated liquid, far hotter than a bath, scalded his skin on contact. As he surfaced, gasping, he inhaled the concentrated fumes, which felt like fire in his lungs, searing the delicate tissues. The chemical immediately began attacking his eyes, his skin, his insides. He tried to climb out, but the sides of the vat were steep and slick with the same solvent. Every frantic movement to climb out only plunged him back under the surface, forcing him to swallow and inhale more of the corrosive liquid. His final moments were a torturous cycle of drowning and chemical burning, a desperate, suffocating struggle in a vat designed to dissolve the toughest grime. The Foundry Crucible Fall. The Foundry was the closest thing to hell on Earth. The air shimmered with heat, and the roar of the furnaces was a constant primal force. In the center of the casting floor sat a colossal refractory-lined vessel containing several tons of molten iron, glowing bright orange with visible heat dissipating. An experienced operator, who was a well-known veteran within the plant, was up on a high gantry, checking the rigging that allows the crucible to tilt and pour. As he was walking forward, he misstepped on a grease spot and lost his balance. His arms wheeling in the superheated air, there was no time to scream. He fell and plunged into the vessel containing a sea of liquid metal. With the human body being mostly water, upon hitting the 2,000-degree metal, that water inside his body instantly flashed into steam. The contact was not a clean immersion. It was a violent, explosive reaction. The molten metal erupted, sending splatters of deadly fire in all directions. He essentially was being cooked alive, with most of his flesh dissolving in the molten iron, suffering a painful and agonizing death. The industrial silo entrapment. Inside a corn factory, the grain silo was a cathedral of agriculture, soaring over 100 feet high, filled to the brim with golden corn. It was also a death trap. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the corn shifted with a whispering, flowing sound. A worker was assigned to walk down the grain, which refers to entering the grain silo to break up a clog that is formed near the bottom outlet. He was standing on what he thought was a solid surface when the clog suddenly gave way. In an instant, the stable corn beneath his feet felt like liquid. It was a quicksand effect, pulling him down to his waist in seconds. He cried out, but his voice was muffled by the billions of kernels around him. He struggled, but every movement only sank him deeper. The pressure from the grain was immense, tightening around his chest like a vice, making it impossible to draw a full breath. As the grain continued to flow out from the bottom, he was pulled under the surface. The world went dark and silent, the weight of tons of corn pressing in on him from all sides. He died not of starvation or thirst, but of compression asphyxiation, fully conscious and trapped in a granular tomb, unable to move a muscle as the life was slowly squeezed from his body. The paper mill tragedy. Inside a paper mill, A paper machine was a thundering, continuous beast. A block-long series of roaring dryers and rumbling rollers that transformed wet pulp into a miles-long sheet of finished paper. The noise was constant, and the humidity was oppressive. An equipment serviceman was performing a routine inspection near the nip point, which was a dangerous gap where two massive, heated rollers met. Perhaps his coveralls were too loose, and he reached in just a little too far. The rotating roller caught a frayed piece of his sleeve, and in less than a second, his arm was yanked into the narrowing gap. The immense pressure of the rollers, designed to squeeze water from pulp, crushed the bones in his arm instantly, but it didn't stop. The machine's relentless pull dragged his shoulder in next, and then his entire body was being fed into the maw of the machine. He was conscious as he was drawn through the labyrinth of rollers. Each set of steel cylinders inflicted new, catastrophic injuries, crushing his torso, breaking his legs, scalding his skin on the heated drums. It was a slow, systematic disassembly of a human body by an unstoppable mechanical force. A journey of unimaginable pain that lasted for what must have felt like an eternity until he was finally crushed to death. The injection molding tragedy. In a plastic injection molding factory, the injection molding department was a forest of machines, each one a hydraulic behemoth that hissed and clanged with the rhythm of production. Their purpose was simple but powerful: to clamp two halves of a heavy steel mold together with hundreds of tons of force, then inject molten plastic into the cavity to create a perfect part. The safety protocols were strict, a two-handed button operation that kept the workers' hands away from the point of operation. An operator was behind on an order and began rushing. The machine was jammed. A finished part had gotten stuck in the mold. The proper procedure was a full lockout, cutting the power and verifying it had zero energy. But that would take time he felt he didn't have. Believing he could be quick, he bypassed the safety gate, reaching deep into the dark throat of the press with a metal tool to pry the part loose. He never saw the sensor fail. He never felt the slight shift in the machine's programming. Without warning, the hydraulic system engaged. The massive metal platen, the moving half of the mold, slid forward with the quiet, unstoppable force of a glacier. It was not a slam, but a slow, crushing advance. He was trapped instantly, his torso and arm caught between two solid steel walls. The force was so immense that he couldn't even scream. The air was crushed from his lungs. The machine, meeting the resistance of his body, clamped down to its full pressure, pinning him in a vice of its own making. He remained there, conscious and suffocating, as the machine hissed, waiting for its next cycle. A cycle that would never come because it was blocked by him. His coworkers could only watch in horror, unable to free him from the machine's relentless grip until the fire department arrived, knowing with terrible certainty that every passing second was an eternity of suffocating pressure and agony. When the fire department arrived, it was too late. He was pronounced dead on the scene.